one strategy that we actually use to tackle avoidance and to help us really test out the accuracy of these negative thoughts is something called a behavioural experiment. And I'm wondering if we can talk through that strategy using the example that you talked about last week about the upcoming party at your cousin's house. Would that be okay?
Okay, I suppose, yeah.
Well, I'll show you the handout. So what you'll see in the first column of this behavioural experiment record is something called a negative thought or image. And these are typical thoughts that kind of crop up for you when you think about actually going along to the party. Right? So when you're thinking about going along to your cousin's party, what kind of thoughts and predictions come to mind about what's going to happen?
I only know my cousin and a couple of her friends. There'll be lots of people there that I won't know.
Okay. So there's only a few people there that you know. There's going to be lots of people there that you don't know. And what would be so bad about that?
I just won't talk to anyone. I might even stand in a corner and look like the loner who just rocked up to the party.
Okay. Can you start to jot some of those ideas down on that page in that first column for me?
So in the negative image column?
In the negative image column, jot down some of those initial thoughts that you had. So you won't talk to anyone, you'll stand in a corner and look a bit like a loner. And the important part of this negative image or thoughts column is getting really specific about what we're concerned will happen when we actually tackle our avoidance, right? So let's say you were to actually talk to someone at this party. What are you afraid would happen then?
I'll just stutter. Nothing will make sense of what I'm saying, and they'll just walk away and stop talking to me.
Okay, can you jot some of those ideas down too?
So
you'll stutter.
I'll stutter, and they'll stop talking to me. They'll walk away.
Okay. Are there any other predictions that come to mind about what's going to happen when you go along to your cousin's party?
I'm kind of thinking I'll just get too anxious and I'll maybe just get to the front door and turn around and go home.
So you've got some predictions about how you're going to actually cope with that feeling?
Yeah.
All right, so you get to the front door, you won't be able to cope and you'll just turn around and go home?
Yeah.
Okay, jot that down for me too.
Write that down too. Okay, so get really anxious. Get to front door and turn away.
Okay.
And I know that times that I've done that, I've just gone home and been so judgmental on myself for not getting there, especially when I've gotten so close to it.
So you're kind of seeing that vicious cycle in action where you, in the short term, might feel a sense of relief and a big drop in your anxiety, but in the longer term, you're feeling quite critical of yourself and quite worse for actually avoiding the situation itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's have a look at this next column then. So the next column asks you for your SUDS rating. So that's what we call the subjective units of distress scale.
Okay,
it's a fancy scale for actually just rating your anxiety out of 10. So if we're thinking on a scale between 0 and 10, 0 being not anxious at all and 10 being the most anxious you ever felt, what would you rate going along to your cousin's party as?
Okay. Like how anxious I feel now thinking about it?
Yeah. How anxious you feel actually thinking about going along?
Like 11 out of 10.
Right. Yeah. So you've maxed out on the scale. So would that be a 10 out of 10 then?
Yeah.
The most anxious you've ever felt going along?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know that she can throw pretty big parties and they can get pretty rowdy sometimes. Yeah. That's making me quite anxious.
All right. And let's flick to the next column then and look at the experiment. And so what we want to do is we want to design an experiment that's aimed at testing out some of these negative predictions that you've just written down about how you think you're going to go at the party. So what kind of experiment would we need to set up? What would you need to do in order for us to test out some of those predictions?
Like go to the party?
Absolutely. I think that's a great first step, right? So can we write that down?
Okay. Oh dear, I don't know how I feel about that.
So it sounds like it might be pretty scary for you, the prospect of actually giving this a shot.
Yeah.
Okay, and it makes sense if you've got all these negative predictions running through your mind that you're going to be feeling pretty anxious about it. But remember, if we avoid and we don't go, then you're never going to give yourself the opportunity to actually test out whether these predictions are accurate or not, right?
Yeah.
So if you just go along to the party and that's it, are we going to have the best opportunity to test out all of those predictions?
I guess not. I can see here I've got things like I won't talk to anyone, I'll stand in a corner, so I guess, no, I'll have to potentially talk to some people.
Great. So how many people do you think you'd need to talk to in order to test out some of the predictions about stuttering and people walking away?
Can I get away with like 2 or 3?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If that's sounds like a helpful starting point, and that will be a great starting point to actually test out what happens when you have a go at talking to people at the party. I think that sounds great.
Okay, so I put it in like the experiment, talk to 2 or 3.
Yeah. So the experiment column needs to be really specific about what we need to do in order to test out our predictions. Because the last thing we want to do is walk away not having accurately kind of tested out these predictions and collected evidence, okay? Because then we just need to repeat the experiment again.
Yeah, okay.
Is there anything else in the experiment column that you think you'd need to do in order to test out those predictions?
Well, I was going to see if one of our other cousins would kind of pick me up before, and most of the time if we have family things, I'll just talk to that cousin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think you need to do about that then?
I think I know what you're going to say. I'll like either we can go together, but that I'll have to kind of strike up conversations with other people. And
absolutely, because what's going to happen if you only talk to your family friend?
I mean, she understands that I'm anxious, so she will just keep the conversation going. And I guess I need to be able to do that myself.
Sounds like that prediction around what will happen when you actually strike up a conversation with somebody else won't be tested if you only speak to your family friend at the party, right? So part of the experiment's really going to have to be about approaching someone new and finding out what happens, whether you stutter and whether they walk away from you.
Okay. So, I can't not stick to my cousin. Yeah. Okay.
Right, let's flick to this next column then. So the next column talks about what evidence you'd need to observe in order to test out some of these negative predictions, okay? Now, when thinking about that, I want you to put on a bit of a detective hat, okay? So I want you to think about if you were a detective and you were looking to test out these predictions, what evidence would you need to observe that would stand up in a court of law? Okay, so if you were arguing to a judge, right, that these predictions were accurate, what would you need to see to build your case? Okay, it's really important that the evidence that we write down here is objective, because it's really easy to look out for ambiguous evidence when we're actually concerned about something bad happening. So for example, if I thought that I was a really boring therapist, okay, and I saw you yawn in the session, what might I think?
I'm bored at what you're saying.
Yeah. I might think, oh my gosh, Adeline definitely thinks I'm a boring therapist. She's going to go along and complain to front desk. It's going to get back to my director, and I'm definitely going to get fired, right? So I take this one piece of pretty ambiguous evidence and I use it to confirm all my negative fears and predictions, right? But what are some other reasons why you might yawn in the session?
I'm tired, I didn't sleep well the night before.
Absolutely, right. So we want to be careful when we're thinking about what evidence we need to observe to test out these predictions, that we're not focusing on ambiguous evidence. We want the evidence to hold up in a court of law so that we can be sure about how reliable these ways of thinking are.
Okay.
So when you're looking at those negative predictions in that first column, what evidence do you think you need to look out for to see if they were true or not?
Like whether those people talk back to me and like have a conversation
Fantastic.
with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Pop that down for me.
So how do I write that?
Well, it sounds like you're concerned that the people will walk away, right? So I guess, do people walk away when you start to talk to them?
So do people walk away? Or have a conversation.
Or do they have a conversation with you?
Okay. Yeah.
What else do you think you need to look out for?
Like, do I end up in the corner looking like a loner?
Absolutely. Yeah. So do I end up in the corner? And how do you know you'd look like a loner? Like, what would that look like?
Like, I can just picture, like, almost like there's a spotlight on me in the corner of the room, and everyone's doing their own thing in their own groups, and no one's paying attention to me, or no one even notices that I'm there.
Okay. Yeah. And are you afraid about that other people will think you're a loner too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, it'd be pretty obvious if they're all chatting with their friends and like might give me the side eye, and who's that there standing in the corner.
Right. Is that a piece of ambiguous evidence or objective evidence about what people are thinking?
Look, I suppose I couldn't tell. Like, they might be looking at something else in my direction.
Great
so
point.
I couldn't really be sure.
What would you need to see or observe to be sure that that's what people are thinking of you?
Like how they're looking, maybe.
Yeah. How would they look if they thought you were a loner?
They'd probably stare.
Okay.
Yeah, with kind of confused. I don't know what to call that expression. Like they think, oh, what's she doing there, standing on?
They might kind of raise their eyebrows, scowl, and kind of stare at you.
Yeah, right. Like that.
Okay.
So do I write that one down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think that's a great idea.
Stare, raised eyebrows. Or maybe even like point to their friends. Or...
Right. Okay. So they're kind of clearly staring at you and pointing at you and talking to their friends.
Yeah.
And if we were being even more specific with this evidence, what would we mean by a stare?
What do you mean?
Like, what constitutes a stare versus a glance?
I suppose they just keep looking. Yeah.
How long would they need to look at you for us to be sure that they're staring, do you think?
Like, in terms of like time, you mean?
Yeah.
3 seconds.
3 seconds? Okay, jot that down too. So they need to be looking at you for at least 3 seconds, raising their eyebrow or scowling, pointing at you, talking to their friends, and then looking back at you.
Yeah. Okay. Talking to their friends. Yeah. Okay.
Is there any other evidence that you need to be looking out for in order to test out some of the predictions you've got in that first column?
I had here that I'll stutter. I suppose I could see whether I stumble over my words.
Great. Anything else?
That one there about getting to the front door and then just going home. I suppose, whether I actually step in.
Fantastic. Great.
Okay, so I wrote there, like, do I go in or do I go home?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Is there anything else that you think you need to be looking out for in order to test out some of your predictions?
I think that's quite a long list of things that I can
I think you've done a great job of being really specific about what evidence you need to be looking out for and exactly what experiment you need to actually undergo in order to test out some of those fears. The next step from here is actually going away and having a go at it, right? So I appreciate that sounds pretty scary for you at the moment. But I wonder, what would it be like for you to learn that perhaps your negative predictions weren't 100% true all of the time?
I mean, like I said, I kind of logically get that most of the time it's okay. It's just, on the day when I'm thinking about it, or even a few days before, I get so worked up just worrying about what could go wrong. That's often when I decide to cancel
And when you have actually challenged your avoidance and things have gone better than you thought, how did that feel for you?
Like, it feels good, and it feels nice to be able to do it, and I don't judge myself as much.
And it sounds like you give yourself an opportunity to build your confidence in these situations too, which is exactly what we want to do consistently with these behavioural experiments. So the point is not to just do a one-off behavioural experiment. The point is to really go away and set yourself probably at least 4 behavioural experiments a week to have a go at, so that we can be really consistent in testing out some of these negative predictions and build your confidence over time in more helpful ways of thinking. Okay. So when you actually have a go at this next week, I want you to jot down the results, and I want you to be really specific about this too. So exactly what evidence did you collect? And I want you to be really careful of that tendency to collect that ambiguous evidence, right? And just stick to the facts. Okay. And from that...
Sorry, I'm just writing, not ambiguous.
Great.
Yeah. Okay.
And from that, I'd like you to draw some conclusions in that final column. Okay, so what is it that you take away from this experiment, right? How were your initial negative predictions different to what you actually found, right? And is there anything that you take away from this experiment that you'd want to remember for next time? Okay. And jot that down in the final column. Okay. And then you'll see there's that little shaded area at the very end. Now this is where imagery can be really helpful, because what we know is that imagery can be as powerful as reality, and it has a really strong link to how we're feeling emotionally. So once you've actually run through the experiment, if you actually close your eyes and visualize those results in your mind, actually carrying out the experiment again, really bringing to mind as vividly as possible what evidence you actually collected, okay, and how the party actually went, then that can be really helpful to draw on and remember the next time you encounter a similar situation that you might be feeling anxious about for similar reasons. Does that idea make sense?
Okay. So I do that, like the image thing, like after the party, or when like after I filled this in?
Yeah, after you filled in your results and conclusions, then spend a couple of minutes bringing to mind what actually happened, just to really consolidate that learning as much as possible. Because what we want to do is help consolidate that learning with each and every behavioural experiment you do, so that you start to think in more realistic and more helpful ways, so we can feel less anxious and continue to challenge that avoidance by approaching these situations, so that these longer term consequences around how much it's affecting your life and your mood and your confidence strip away and improve as well. Okay. Are there any questions about what we've just covered?
No, I'm feeling tense thinking about it. But like you said, I do need to collect some of that evidence, rather than beat myself about not going. And
fantastic.
And
what we'll do is we'll set this as your homework task for the week, and then next session we can have a bit of a debrief about how you've gone, talk about the results and conclusions, and set up some more behavioural experiments from there. How does that sound?
Well, give it a go.
Great. Thanks, Adeline.